Perhaps you've heard the old Japanese saying, Kagami ni utsuru mono wa kanarazu shinjitsu dewanai. What reflects in the mirror is not always the truth. Today's story comes from Kyoto, where ancient traditions blend uneasily with modern life, and where certain rules passed down through generations are still observed by those who know better. Before we begin, let me share something a shrine maiden once told me during a late-night interview in Fushimi Inari. She leaned close, her voice barely above a whisper. Mirrors are gateways. During the day, they serve us, but at midnight, they serve something else. This isn't just another urban legend. What you're about to hear was documented by multiple witnesses, recorded in police reports, and still whispered about in certain neighborhoods of eastern Kyoto. It's a reminder that some cultural taboos exist for reasons we've forgotten, until someone breaks them. Let's call her Yuki, 28 years old, a graphic designer who just landed her dream job at a boutique design firm in Kyoto. Single, ambitious, and practical to a fault. She'd grown up in Tokyo, where superstitions were things her grandmother muttered about but never explained. Modern Japan had no room for such nonsense, she believed. The apartment she found in March 2019 was perfect, almost suspiciously so. A renovated unit in a traditional Machiya townhouse, complete with exposed wooden beams and modern amenities. The rent was 30% below market rate. The landlord, an elderly man with trembling hands, had seemed almost desperate to rent it. Just one thing, he'd mentioned as she signed the lease, his eyes avoiding hers. The previous tenant left some furniture, including an antique mirror in the bedroom. Please, be careful with it. Yuki had laughed it off. The mirror was beautiful, a full-length piece with an ornate bronze frame depicting cranes and pine trees. It looked like it belonged in a museum. She positioned it perfectly to catch the morning light, creating the illusion of a larger space. Her routine was simple. Wake at 6:30, quick shower, breakfast while checking emails, out the door by 7:45. Return home around 8 p.m., sometimes later. Light dinner, maybe some Netflix, asleep by 11:30. The mirror became part of this routine. A final check of her appearance each morning, a brief glance while changing in the evening. She never looked at it after midnight. Not at first. It started on a Thursday in late April. Yuki had been working on a particularly demanding project, arriving home past 11 p.m. Exhausted, she'd fallen asleep on the couch while watching a drama, still in her work clothes. She woke suddenly at 12:07 a.m. The apartment was dark except for the pale blue glow from her laptop screen. As she stumbled toward the bedroom, something made her pause at the doorway. The mirror seemed different in the darkness. Not obviously so, just a subtle wrongness that made her skin prickle. The bronze frame appeared duller, as if coated with years of dust she'd somehow never noticed. But it was the reflection that made her freeze. For just a moment, so brief she immediately doubted herself, she thought she saw her reflection blink. Not simultaneously with her own blink, but a fraction of a second after. Like a delay in a video call. She rubbed her eyes, looked again. Normal. Just her tired face staring back, bags under her eyes, hair disheveled. She laughed nervously at herself, went to bed, and tried to forget about it. But the next morning, she found herself avoiding the mirror's gaze while getting dressed. She told herself she was being ridiculous, yet she couldn't shake the feeling that something in the reflection was watching her with an interest entirely its own. 3 nights later, it happened again. This time, Yuki was prepared, or thought she was. She'd set her phone to record, propping it on the dresser, aimed at the mirror. If she was imagining things, the video would prove it. 12 a.m., exactly. She stood before the mirror, heart hammering against her ribs. The apartment was silent, except for the distant hum of the refrigerator and the occasional creak of old wood settling. At first, nothing. Her reflection stood there, matching her every movement perfectly. She raised her right hand. The reflection raised its right hand. She tilted her head. The reflection tilted its head. Then the smell hit her. Subtle at first, like flowers left too long in stagnant water. Sweet, but wrong, with an underlying note of decay. It seemed to emanate from the mirror itself, growing stronger with each passing second. Her reflection smiled. Yuki hadn't smiled. The expression in the mirror was small, barely noticeable, just a slight upturn at the corners of the mouth. But Yuki's own face remained frozen in shock. Worse, the reflected smile was widening, revealing teeth that seemed too sharp, too many. She stumbled backward, knocking over her phone. The recording stopped. When she finally gathered the courage to look again, the mirror showed only her terrified face, exactly as it should. The smell lingered for hours. She opened every window, lit incense, sprayed air freshener. Nothing helped. It clung to her clothes, her hair, infiltrating her dreams when she finally fell into fitful sleep near dawn. Yuki tried to review the phone footage the next day, but the file was corrupted. Just static and distorted audio that sounded like whispers in a language she didn't recognize. She needed proof she wasn't losing her mind. She installed a new security camera, one that uploaded directly to the cloud. She told her concerned coworkers she was documenting her apartment for insurance purposes. They accepted the lie easily enough, though they noticed the dark circles under her eyes, the way her hands shook during presentations. For 3 nights, nothing happened. The mirror remained just a mirror. Yuki began to relax, convincing herself it had been stress-induced hallucinations. Then came May 1st, the beginning of Golden Week. She'd gone to bed early, exhausted from deadline crunches before the holiday. The camera captured everything that happened at 12 a.m. The mirror's surface began to ripple like disturbed water. Slowly, a hand emerged from within, pale, delicate, with fingernails grown long and yellowed with age. It pressed against the inside of the glass, leaving condensation marks that spelled out characters in old Japanese script. Then a face appeared. Not Yuki's reflection, but someone else entirely. A woman in a white kimono, her hair hanging in wet strands across features that might have been beautiful once, but were now waterlogged and distorted. Her mouth opened in a silent scream, or perhaps a call. The woman's eyes locked onto the sleeping Yuki. She pressed harder against the glass, and for one terrifying moment, cracks appeared in the mirror's surface. Real, physical cracks that hadn't been there before. When Yuki woke at 6:30 a.m. and checked the footage, she saw it all. The upload was perfect, undeniable. The cracks in the mirror remained as proof. She packed a bag and left immediately, but not before taking photos of everything. Yuki spent Golden Week at her parents' house in Tokyo, researching frantically. The elderly landlord wouldn't answer her calls, but her neighbor, Mrs. Tanaka, A woman in her 70s who'd lived in the area all her life finally agreed to meet her at a nearby cafe. "I wondered when you'd come asking," Mrs. Tanaka said, stirring her tea with deliberate slowness. "That mirror, it belonged to the Hashimoto family. They lived in your apartment 60 years ago." The story she told chilled Yuki to her core. The Hashimoto's daughter, Michiko, had been beautiful but vain, spending hours before that very mirror. She'd been engaged to marry, but the night before her wedding, she'd discovered her fiancé with another woman. In her despair, at exactly midnight, she'd stared into the mirror and cursed her own reflection, wishing she could trade places with it, to become something else, something that couldn't feel such pain. "They found her the next morning," Mrs. Tanaka whispered, standing before the mirror, stone dead. Eyes open, staring at her own reflection, but witnesses swear they saw her reflection move, saw it smile and walk away while her body remained frozen. Since then, every tenant who's looked into that mirror at midnight has reported experiences. The previous tenant, a businessman, broke his lease after just 2 months, said he saw Michiko trying to pull him through. Yuki returned to the apartment that evening with a hammer. She didn't wait for midnight. At 11:45 p.m., she stood before the mirror one last time. In its surface, she could see movement beginning already. Ripples forming. A shape coalescing behind the glass. "I'm sorry, Michiko," she said aloud, "but you can't have my life." She swung the hammer with all her strength. The mirror shattered into 1,000 pieces, each fragment reflecting a different image. Faces she didn't recognize. Rooms that weren't in her apartment. Moments from times long past. There was a sound like screaming wind, a rush of that rotting flower smell, and then silence. The fragments showed only her own frightened face, multiplied into infinity. In Japanese folklore, mirrors, or kagami, have long been considered sacred objects with the power to reveal truth, trap souls, and serve as gateways between worlds. The taboo against looking into mirrors at midnight stems from the belief that this is when the boundary between our world and the spirit realm is thinnest. The Awase Kagami phenomenon, when two mirrors face each other, creating infinite reflections, is particularly feared, as it's believed to create a pathway for spirits to cross over. Some scholars trace this fear back to ancient Shinto beliefs, where mirrors were used in purification rituals and were thought to house divine spirits. There are multiple interpretations of Yuki's experience. The psychological explanation suggests that sleep deprivation and stress caused hallucinations, with the corrupted video files being technical glitches, and the security footage showing digital artifacts. The midnight timing could have triggered a form of self-hypnosis, where expected phenomena manifest through suggestion. The historical interpretation notes that old mirrors often contained lead and mercury in their backing, which can create toxic fumes, causing hallucinations and neurological symptoms. The apartment's age and poor ventilation could have concentrated these toxins, particularly at night when windows were closed. But then there's the supernatural interpretation, that Michiko's spirit, trapped by her dying curse, truly did inhabit the mirror, seeking to exchange places with the living. The fact that multiple tenants reported similar experiences and that physical evidence was documented suggests something beyond mere coincidence. Japanese paranormal researchers have noted that mirrors involved in tragic deaths often become tsukumogami, objects that acquire souls after existing for long periods. Once sentient, these objects can act with their own will, sometimes malevolently. Yuki still lives in Kyoto, but moved to a modern apartment with no mirrors except a small one in the bathroom. She says she never looks at any reflective surface after 11 p.m. The shattered mirror's fragments were properly disposed of at a shrine, where a priest performed purification rites. The apartment remains vacant to this day. The landlord has stopped trying to rent it. Some nights, neighbors report seeing lights in the empty unit at exactly midnight. When they look closer, they see a figure standing where the mirror used to be, staring at the blank wall as if seeing something the rest of us cannot. What do you think happened? Was it stress and suggestion? Toxic fumes from an antique mirror? Or did Michiko's spirit truly try to reclaim life through an ancient gateway? Let us know in the comments below. And don't forget to subscribe for more true ghost stories from across Asia.